So I'll set you right up, and Taivo will be talking something about AI, but compared to many other people who are just using it, I think he's actually doing something with it. So I hope that you can learn something from it. So.
Thank you. Let me quickly do a poll in the audience. Can you raise your hand if you're not from Estonia? Wow, most of the people. Just so you know, how do you put it, the culture, the rules for conferences in Estonia, there are 3 important rules. 1, never raise your hand, don't ask questions. 2, don't look people in the eye. And 3, in the networking session, only speak to people you already know. So now that you know the local culture, today I want to share with you 3 stories from my experience building production AI features and products. He was fired 1 month later. So this goes back to 2018 when I started at Veriff. If you don't know, Veriff is an Estonian unicorn today. What they do is identity verification, essentially. Put in an ID card or passport, get out a decision about whether this is legit or not. And when I joined, I was the first machine learning engineer. There was, how shall I say, the AI part was not so much there. So all of the decisions were being made by humans sitting in an office. And it was my job to hopefully, make some of them redundant, or rather help us grow while not hiring hundreds of people. And one of the big problems we had at the time with the product or the approach we had was that the typical way that Veriff is integrated into a customer's product is in the key onboarding flow. So a new customer signing up for, I don't know, Revolut is a typical example. I don't know if they're actually a Veriff customer or not, but as part of that onboarding, they have to go through identity document verification. And if that fails, the user cannot use the product, so it kills conversion. So conversion is a very important metric for this product. But the problem was that users were taking low-quality photos. So the loop went roughly, user takes a photo of themselves as part of the onboarding. A human on Veriff side reviews it manually, and that can take 1 hour, 24 hours, 48 hours in the worst cases. And then if the photo is not of good enough quality, they request a new photo. And if you have ever experienced this, it's extremely annoying. You get asked for some, like the edge of your document was 0.5 millimeter out of the frame, and then you have to come back and you have to do it 3 or 4 times. You can imagine how bad UX this is, and of course, it kills conversion as well. The solution we had to this, or we were hoping to build for this, was to do the same loop in 5 seconds. So instead of a human giving this feedback, we would do this automatically with technology called AI, right? And the way that, so this was when I joined, the way that one of the engineers was developing it was very weird to me. He was sitting in the Veriff Tallinn office, had the browser open, and in the console he was like writing different pixel counting algorithms and testing them directly on his webcam, which maybe it seems like a reasonable approach, but the problem with that is that the data points looked something like this, right? Like this is what you would typically get when you take photos of yourself at the office. But the issue is that this was essentially made up data. It wasn't real usage data from actual customers. And this sort of data is very simple, right? White background, white male, sitting calmly, like nothing really is happening. And real data is complex. Different genders, races, backgrounds, glasses, accessories. The glasses have reflections, makeup, and in one case, you just might not think about this. There is nobody. Like, you take a photo of your shoe or your curtains or whatever, there's no human in the photo even. And all of this complexity was uncaptured in the let's say, the development process that this engineer was running. And so he was fired. He was fired about a month after. And I think this was not the only reason, but it reflected his approach, and I think it really contributed to him leaving the company. So the better way to do it is to actually use the complexity, the variety of real data to test against it in your development process, in your quality assurance process. And it's not rocket science, right? For each of those images, each of those 8 images, you could assign a label. Is it okay or is it not okay? Is it acceptable in terms of the image quality or not? And it would take you and me, I don't know, 50 seconds to label all of them. So it's not as though it's a huge lift either. So on the same problem of detecting low-quality images, I have a question to you. There are 3 possible approaches, or there are many more actually, but like 3 that I'm mentioning here. One is to train a neural network from scratch to detect this low quality, classify yes or no, is it high or low quality. 2 is to take an existing neural network and then train only the last layer or only a very small model on top of the pre-trained neural network. Or 3, you could take classical computer vision algorithms, like an edge detection algorithm, and try to essentially manually write weights or make some sort of pipeline on top of that. And my question to you is, which is the best solution? Raise your hand if you think number 1 is the best solution to this problem. Don't listen to it was a joke before. You can raise your hand, you know. Okay, 2, who thinks number 2 is the best solution? Okay, and number 3? Good. So the correct answer was to not raise your hand at all. It's a bit of a trick question. Either you adapt well to the Estonian culture, or you got the question right. It's a trick question because the answer is whatever solves the examples well enough. A priori, it's unclear, and you should probably just use the absolute minimal, the simplest approach that solves all of them. So the essence of the philosophy is maybe a strong word, like way of thinking about solving these kinds of problems is that first you list out the examples, even the 8 examples we showed. 2, define the expected output. In each case, yes or no, was it acceptable or not? And 3, whatever solution you have at the moment, initially could be a dummy, just produce false all the time. Measure the accuracy, measure the quality metric on that dataset of that solution, and then iterate. Whenever I talk about this, I feel so dumb. Like, why am I talking about it? It's extremely common sense, right? But I think maybe it isn't, because listing examples is not something people do often. Often you start with a list of requirements. You write a bullet list of things that the system should be able to do. And instead of labeling the examples, there is a written spec that defines like what are the acceptance criteria, how the system should behave, etc. And then in the development phase, or when writing the solutions, instead of measuring quality against this data set, people focus on making all the tests pass. And these are all reasonable approaches, but I think for different kinds of software. So if you're developing something where the input-output relationship, let's say, it's not that straightforward. You cannot easily capture it in a relatively simple set of rules, like a couple of pages of code, text, whatever. Then this approach is much more productive in my experience. And that means mostly, most AI features are like that. You might say, and I hear you saying, isn't this just TDD? And I think they're test-driven development, and I think it has some shared properties. So in both cases, you have a list of tests, and the tests define the expected behavior, and you actually iterate on the tests simultaneously while developing the system. So both of these this is true for both test-driven development and this sort of dataset-based development that I'm talking about here. But there are also key differences. So if you test against datasets, you use real examples. Real examples, production data, the complexity, you want to capture all of that. not manually written test cases. 2, mostly this is useful to do on an end-to-end level, not on unit level. And 3, you might have 1,000 tests or 100,000 covering essentially the exact same input and output, and the different examples focus on different edge cases, different parts of the distribution. And the success metrics are not just pass rate, it is more complex usually. Accuracy is the simplest one, but there's precision recall, F1 scores in the binary classification case. If you do object detection or if you do translation, it's even much more difficult to define those metrics. But these are, in general, much more complex. So this is learning number 1 from this story. Test against real examples, or you will be fired. Second story. It could have been a $1 billion company. A couple of years ago, me and a couple of my friends, we started a company called NFT-Port. What we did was we offered developer tools, so APIs for creating creating NFTs and using NFT data in your application. The image on the right here, it's taken at peak NFT time. It was summer of 2022. We were in New York. It was the New York NFT NYC conference, which is like the most important event of the industry for that year. Times Square was full of NFT billboards, essentially. Something I had really not seen before, that like my industry is dominating the streets in some place. And we had just raised a $26 million Series A. We were doing extremely well. We had something like 30 people. And only a couple of months later, I'd read the headline. Social media has taken a big leap into Web3 integration, but doubts about mass adoption remain. And mass adoption for us was critical, because if you make developer tools, like someone needs to use them, someone needs to succeed with them. So if nobody is using NFTs in the world, our customers cannot succeed, which means we cannot succeed. And we saw, so some of the biggest social media platforms in the world were using us, and we saw our contacts there basically getting downsized, cut, fired, week by week, just emails going cold, us not even being able to get in touch with them. So this was a really bad time for us. Our biggest customer asked for a 95% discount. And they were correct, like that was actually the appropriate market price. So after lots of difficult emotional processing, we decided to pivot. And what do you do if you're a good founder and you need to pivot? Of course, you fly to San Francisco. So the whole team essentially had an AI background, and we decided to try to make something in the AI space. We flew to San Francisco because that's where let's say the earliest, most raw action was happening, and this is just an example of the vibe that was going on at the time. It's a slide from a conference where one of the central people in the developer ecosystem is explaining how AI engineers will be 1,000 times more productive thanks to AI. So that's like representative of the vibe. At the time, so this is middle of 2023, there was this project called AutoGPT. Have you heard about it? Very good. You will see in a moment why you haven't heard about it. But at the time, it was crazy. It was the fastest ever growing GitHub project. It had 100,000 stars in 3 months. And you can see the chart. PyTorch, which is a popular machine learning library, took like 6 or 7 years to get to a lower amount of stars than AutoGPT. So it was very popular, it was very exciting, it was on the cutting edge of what was possible at the time. And AutoGPT, if you don't know what it was, obviously you don't because you haven't heard about it, it was essentially the first AI agent. So one of the first attempts of making an LLM run in a loop with tools to do useful tasks. And the exact architecture, maybe it's not that important, but I'll go through it briefly. So it had this complex prompt with multiple parts, thoughts, reasoning, plan, criticism, and speaking, and then picking an action, what API call to make, what function to call. It had history, it had memory, it had web search tools, browser tools, it had some notepad. So it had a huge amount of bells and whistles. Obviously, we were super excited about it. And me as the CTO at the time, I started I cloned the repo, tried to understand what it is about, and tried to make it better, essentially. Try to see how can I improve on this. And obviously, the first thing I did was I set up a small test set for myself, test set of examples. One of the testing examples that I used was find the home address of Kaspar Peterson. So he was my co-founder at the time, and it was reasonable. I knew this could be done off of the public internet without huge effort. So this was a good testing example. But I set up for myself this test set of only, I think, 5 examples or so, and I started making changes in the code base while running my automated tests against the 5 examples. What I realized was that as I read through the code base, it was very complex. It had many moving parts, and as I started removing them, the performance kept getting better. And it got faster and cheaper at the same time because it was using less tokens. And I was very, very surprised. How can this one not so talented engineer improve on something that has 100,000 GitHub stars and is the talk of the town in San Francisco? But I think I understand now. And the answer and the reason that you haven't heard about it is that they didn't test. They didn't really have a use case, a problem in mind. They didn't have a list of examples that they would want to improve the performance against. They were just adding features, essentially, without understanding what the performance is. And the output or outcome of this is that they raised a 12 million seed round, which is probably Series A, let's say, order of magnitude in Europe. And in 1.5 years since then, they still haven't launched the product, and it appears that the initiative has sort of died out. I will contrast this with OpenAI. OpenAI has something like 500 million monthly active users right now. And I think a key part of why that is, obviously there are many reasons, but the reason that their product keeps getting better and keeps achieving the goals that you want the product to do for you is that they have an extremely detailed evaluation suite. If you want, you can go and it's a public repo. You can look into it, see what they do, how they evaluate their AI systems, and they have invested a lot of effort into it. And this is only the public part, right? Every AI company has something like this. They make lots of investments in this, but OpenAI has a public, let's say, section of it is public, which is very interesting because you can go and read what they're doing. So to summarize this, if you focus on the problem and if you define the problem well with examples, then you will not over-engineer the solution. Story number 3. This is an intimate story, as you can see from the photo. The CTO's job was labeling data. So I'll quickly explain what I'm CTO at Pactum AI. I'll quickly explain about what we do, and then I'll go into the story. So what we do is we make software for the largest companies in the world, Fortune 500, and we help the procurement department, which is the department where every dollar that the company spends goes through their processes, their tools. They're essentially responsible for managing this whole, spending money at those companies. They are our customers inside those companies, and they have hundreds of different softwares. They have very unstructured data, messy data, and for us to be able to operate, to be able to help them with let's say, automation, AI agents, and negotiating with their suppliers, which is a core part of what we do, we need to understand every data format in the world, basically. We can't assume that you will send us like JSON formatted XYZ or CSV or XML or anything. We just have to be able to process any kind of data, including images, including screenshots, scanned paper documents, everything. And how do you do that? So one obvious answer to this, and I had a hunch on this for a long time, is just put them into ChatGPT, right? That's what works today, but you need a bit more than this hunch to act on it, to put it on the roadmap and actually spend a lot of time building it. So the specific problem that we want to solve at the time was mid last year, was to find contact details in any document. There are 3 examples here. It's invoices, contracts, quotes, could be emails, they could be in image form, PDF, text, whatever. All of this, we had to build a system that takes any of this in, or any combination of those in, and outputs the right person that Pactum can reach out to, so that we can have an AI negotiation around the contract. So that was the problem. And as I said, I had a hunch that LLMs are good enough for this. The intelligence that today's LLMs have is by far good enough. But the problem was that we didn't know whether we should build this. So first of all, how effective would it be to make a system like this? Or what would the accuracy be, or whatever is the right metric for evaluating the quality? 2, how much effort would it be to get to that level? And of course, there are different trade-offs here, right? And 3, could we avoid catastrophic mistakes? So for example, sending, if we detect from one PDF, we find the wrong email, we send sensitive business data to the wrong company, which is very, very bad. We sat on this idea for, for a month or 2, but eventually I had enough. I didn't want to be talking about it. So what I did, I scheduled a hackathon one day, and not in the normal sense of hackathon, where you just meet on Friday evening and start drinking beer and think of business ideas, but a very focused hackathon where we knew what the problem was that we wanted to address. These were the questions that we needed to answer. And we took one day with one of the best engineers in the company to do that. And what we did was, essentially, we divided labor. He was writing the scripts to pull in the data and implementing the first LLM, solution to make these extractions. And my job was labeling data. And I think it was so this is a real example of the Google Sheet that I used. Obviously, I can't show the sensitive data here, but the black boxes were filled out manually by me by looking at PDF documents or text documents, images. The value of this kind of work, the engineer, by the way, he was very surprised. He was like, he told me that he was surprised to see me focus only on the data, essentially, and not at all on the code. And I think that was the right choice. That was the correct place to focus on, because the code part was in a sense very simple. But figuring out what the correct answer is for each type of input, and even putting together the data set that we could test against, on which we could answer those questions. That was my job there, and I'm happy I did it. I would do it again any day. This, of course, can become more professional over time as you bring features into production. You start off with nothing, right? There's nothing. You don't test at all. You make maybe some first proof of concept and you manually test it. Second stage, let's say, you have just commit into your Git repo a couple of examples, or just have them in a local folder. Number 3, this is somehow garbled, but you make a Google Sheet like I did with a bunch of examples and have a script for running that against the algorithm that you have in mind. Number 4, you set up a database, API, UI for labeling, reviewing the examples, and many steps later, and this is where we got to at Veriff, you have on-demand production-like environments that are automatically spin up parallel testing on hundreds of thousands of examples, structured output that you can then analyze in BI tools. There were, I think, 20 people in operational teams supporting this process, plus obviously infra engineers, data scientists. So this whole area was very, very big in the end. But you should still start from a Google Sheet or from the 5 examples in the local folder. You should still start small, because if you have nothing, then doing the first step in 1 hour is the right choice instead of spending time researching these data labeling tools or testing frameworks or things like that. The impact of this feature for the company has been that we have one of the main product success metrics. We were able to increase that 30% with this feature, this algorithm only. We retained one key customer, a globally recognized brand that was very important for us. And 3, I think this is actually one of maybe the most important impact. Us succeeding with that feature, even though it was narrow, it increased our ambition, increased our self-confidence. Yes, we can make these sorts of things happen, and we will do more of them. So I think now we're thinking of 10x, 100x more complex, more powerful things to do in a similar vein. So the learning, do things that don't scale. I wanted to say a couple of words about why this is important specifically now, because I could have given you essentially the same presentation like 8 years ago. In a sense, nothing has changed, and this is an old concept. It's not made up by myself. I learned it at Starship and then applied it at Veriff and now Pactum. But 2 reasons why it is important now is, 1, I assume most of you work in software companies, and almost all software is now beginning to include AI features, and it's different. You cannot test them in the exact same way that you used to. So AI features are becoming table stakes. That means all of our jobs is somewhat changing, or we have an extra responsibility to deal with these sorts of features. And number 2, making solutions, writing code, essentially, it's getting 10 times cheaper. Maybe not 1,000 times yet, but 10 times. You can use Cursor or Claude Code, OpenAI Codex, any of those tools to automatically generate solutions if you have a well-defined problem. And what this means is, if you look at like this is not a pie, but like a column of time spent by a technical person or let's say the whole engineering team in a software company, then I don't know, maybe this slice is spent on writing code, let's say half. This slice will decrease over time as the models get better, as the product's AI coding tools get better. What remains becomes more important. It becomes a bigger proportion of the total. So it is more and more important to be able to validate well, to define the problem well, validate whether whatever solution we have or we're thinking of is working. And I think this is essentially everyone in this room is becoming more and more important every month in their company, even if you do nothing, essentially. So I think this is good news for all of us. Unless you're, let's say, a very senior software engineer, you may be surprised. But so to summarize, test against real examples, or you will be fired. Don't over-engineer the solution, or you will miss out on a $100 billion opportunity. And 3, do things that don't scale if you want to become the CTO. Thank you.
Apparently things work better when they're switched on. Thank you, Taivo. Right now is the time for Q&A. And QA actually in Nordic testing days means one thing. It's called question assurance. So unless there are any questions coming from the audience, we will pick one of you to ask a question. So no pressure. And taking care of it, we have Christian and myself and some pretty big guys. So let's go. Questions? Raise your hand and we will bring the microphone to you.
If you can't think of a question yourself, use AI.
We got one. Taking one for the team.
Oh, big pleasure. Thank you very much for sharing insights. It was very useful, very interesting. Not sure if it's directly connected, but what kind of tools or products you recommend right now or that you are using in testing AI? I guess this is the most frequent question that I get from the team. What are you using? What are you doing? And I'm like, well, there are lots of solutions, but nothing that I can recommend fully. Is there anything from your experience?
Well, I had the slide about examples in local folder, Google Sheet and the script. And I think I'm serious. Like, I think you should start thinking about that question once you have done those and they become too cumbersome to operate that way. The problem with this is it's extremely domain specific, because if you want to do end-to-end testing, so in the Pactum case, the schema, essentially, the input type, I sort of simplified it for you. It's a document and the output is an email. But in reality, the input type is like an important internal entity, negotiation event that's like the container. It has potentially multiple documents, multiple suppliers, and it's quite complex, and we want to evaluate it end to end. And there's no solution, no tool that just like plug in your specific domain problem and we will have the perfect solution for you. So doing the end-to-end things is not quite as straightforward with external tooling, and that's why internal tooling has like relatively more value. If you do something which is more standard, like image in, let's say one enum out, or text in, text out, these sorts of things, there are tools for that. I used to keep a list of all the best, or not all the best, all the annotation tools, all the data labeling tools. You can find it on Google. I think it's called Awesome Data Annotation. I haven't really maintained it like in the past couple of years. There are many new things that have come up, but I couldn't give you a recommendation. I would honestly, like, most of the time I would just like hand roll them, because it is so deeply tied to what the product is that you are building. Human loop used to be a good one, I think, for text to text. If you want a particular vendor, I think Scale AI has it, which is like a very mainstream company. I think they have expanded the product portfolio to data testing as well. And if you want an open source solution, I think Langsmith, which is by the LangChain guys, I think there's an open source version of this. There's also a paid hosted version. For computer vision, there is something called CVAT, C-V-A-T, which is, you can use for free, self-hosted, but it's a bit clunky, I think. There are actually many options, but yeah, I couldn't give you like one strong recommendation.
So, not pressing any buttons here, but we have 20 minutes to go, and we need questions. I'm not joking.
All right. There's one in the back.
Thank you very much for the pitch. Very, very good. I really like it. Wanted to understand a little bit what is your vision, or what is your ideas on the future of both testing, given that most people or most companies are switching to AI, and kind of feel like if we are using AI for development, we are using AI for quality assurance, if there is a point where things might get funky, and if you think that QA, like just regular manual QA, will decrease or increase with time?
Great question. I haven't thought about it very deeply, but my feeling is that you can sort of feel when you are doing manual QA, you can feel the amount of intelligence required in the task, right? And if it is quite low, if you're not really stretching your brain, you're just like, the contribution you are giving is reading a document and then using your hand to move a mouse and keyboard to type. That is probably something that's relatively easy to automate, and it will be. Especially since we have vision models, computer using models, which are already very good, and I think even possibly good enough to automate a lot of the manual QA, but it takes time to productize those models. So I think the base intelligence for almost everything that we want to do at Pactum is actually already there in terms of the features and possibly even testing, maybe not all the development. So I think the simpler part of the job will somewhat go away, but someone still needs to, like, I think this will be true for a very long time. Someone needs to rein in the bots, right? Someone needs to give the bot the task. So this is what is important to test. This is, they come back with a response. Someone needs to evaluate, is this an appropriate response? Is the task completed correctly? And that sort of thing, it's changing every week, essentially, but it's hard for me to see that it would be like, 2 AIs or 1 AI system, like just for a year without any human input doing well with QA. And rather, I think it's the opposite. Like if you have used Cursor or any AI coding tool, your job becomes quite different than that of a normal software engineer. Your job is, today it's like a kindergarten teacher, right? Or maybe like primary school teacher. You're holding the hand of the AI to not go off rails, to keep them focused on the task, to not do more than is needed, to not change existing things. And as the systems get better, there will be less of that, but it seems very, very hard for me to believe that in the long term, I think in the next like 2 years, this is a long term, by the way, in AI timelines, that it would drastically change. However, I would say that if you do not become irrelevant, I think you should be at least somewhat aware of like what's the state of the art right now, or maybe like be 3 months, 6 months away from the state of the art. So as things change fast, the people who understand the new tools, where they are good and where they are bad, I think this is a very important skill to have. Sorry, very long answer to a question. I can follow up if you want.
Any more? We got one. I'll ask one also in the meanwhile. So we are running this conference for people in QA and testing.
Yeah.
So what I need to know is that when will they all be fired? And do we have a point of running this conference any further?
Well, look to your left, look to your right. Which of those 2 people will still have a job in 2 years? It's very hard for me to tell. I don't know. Like, I think, okay, I'll give you like an uncertainty range. I don't think there will be an equal amount of jobs, the same jobs, in the similar role description, similar responsibility list in 2 years. It will be, but like people and organizations move slowly. So it'll take, I think, years for it to get to, 50% of you having a job in the exact same role that you have today. But it's basic economics that, like, essentially there is this concept of comparative advantage. A 12-year-old, I might be better than a 12-year-old at everything. I'm probably not, but like, literally everything I could do, I could produce more output or be better at the task than they are. But they still have a job because I have something more important to do than sell newspapers at the main square, right? So even if the AI takes part of your job, there will always be something for you to do, whether you like it or not. Like the concept, the nature of your job will change, but I think like you will not lose your job, and I think rather the salaries will go up because you're using more powerful tools, achieving more with the same amount of time. So, and this is true for essentially all occupations. So I'm not pessimistic. You might not have the same job. I think you will have a job.
You think?
Well, I can't promise you anything, right? Ask your boss. That's maybe or maybe you don't want to start the conversation like, hey, when do you think I won't have a job because of AI?
Yeah, hello. Just a question on, would you have any tips? Actually, what I'm thinking of doing, I'm very new to this AI, but basically what I want to do is I want to extract from Jira 10 years of requirements, user stories, all this kind of stuff, load it into one of these models, and then I can ask it questions. So it would be like mostly text-based PDFs and text. Would you have any tips how to go about it, or what to, like where to start actually, what models to use and tools and stuff?
Yeah. Step one, do what you just said. I think that's, based on your description, that sounds like the most important bottleneck right now. If you want specific recommendations, Google Gemini has the best combination of like price versus performance. These are some of the best models in the world at some of the cheapest prices. So if you just want to default to a model, use Google Gemini. It's also nice that it has like, it's one of the major cloud platforms, great security, privacy, all that kind of requirements. It's easy if you use this in a sort of sensitive or production setting. There will be, it looks better for you to have Google Cloud as your sub-processor than OpenAI, right? Just clients will ask less questions. So that I would go with that. But then like just write the script, don't write the script, just go to Gemini UI, copy paste some of the PDFs, put them in and start asking questions. That's the fastest way for you to do it. 5 minutes, you'll get the first feedback and you will find the first examples, right? Like I have this question, this should be the answer. And you will be able to put that into the Google Sheet, collect the first examples, and then you will have something to iterate against.
We got one more question, 2 more questions. Yes, you're after.
Thank you. When it comes to data collection, how do you get data? And how do we make sure that data is, well, valid, legit, and diverse enough? Any tips?
Do you have a particular like problem in mind, or just in general?
Yes, I worked in a company where we had it was always a challenge how to get data, to annotate it, and sometimes it was really hard to collect samples, collect good enough data. Are there any good sources where you can buy it legally, or how should we approach this problem?
I guess it's hard to answer this in a generic sense. The best solution, as I said in the first part of the talk, is to use your actual production usage data, right? Because that will, these are the examples that your software is likely to encounter in actual operation, right? That's the best kind of distribution to test on and to train on if you need to train. If you're I assume you were in an earlier stage, you didn't have huge production deployment of this system. I think buying data is a bit sketchy, both because even if it's legal, it is the reputational risk is there. If someone discovers you bought X amount of data from, I don't know, Facebook, you just might face backlash as a company, and your clients will not like it. So best to use the data that you have of production usage. If you don't, I guess then it's brainstorming time. How do you make a product that gives you similar data that you need, but you may just make a product or feature that gives you that data. Facebook, for example, it was quite transparent, but a couple of years ago they made this 10-year challenge feature where you were supposed to upload a photo of yourself today and 10 years ago as kind of a fun game on Facebook, obviously for training their age models. But they try and you can try as well, and you can try and make it sort of more natural and less obviously data scraping feature than they did.
Yeah, in the context of the current political climate, what is happening in Europe? Or is Europe screwed in the AI space?
I'm not going to let myself be screwed. No, I don't think. I mean, there is in some sense, yes, but okay, it's a complex topic. So the most important part of the whole stack right now seems to be foundation models. We do have foundation model training companies in Europe, specifically Mistral is I think the most advanced. But all of the major cloud providers or the model providers, they want to sell into Europe. So they are happy and they will, as long as they can make it work, they will not stop offering their models in Europe, right? The problem is, I think, or something that it's hard for us as individuals to do something, but Europe tends to want to lead innovation with regulation. And it is, I am yet to grasp the entire logic of this. I'll put it this way. I mean, there is a logic to this. Like, you make it very clear what kinds of things are okay and what are not. Create regulatory clarity, which makes companies more confident in doing these sorts of edge case things, right? But that's not what Europe is doing. Europe is creating like lots of confusion, and GDPR is a good example. Like, the rules weren't clear, they were getting enforced by courts, and the actual case law was getting built up over years. It's very hard to still tell confidently whether something is acceptable or not under GDPR. And I have a fear that under the AI Act, we will get to something similar. So, and this is like very much like a foot gun, right? We're like, we don't have large tech companies, so let us just like create more regulation. I'm a bit, as I said, as you can see, I'm a bit skeptical of this approach, but I don't think it's a fundamental problem. Like, if there is a market that US companies want to sell to and serve and even like have R&D centers in, it's Europe. So it's not like this long-term big issue. It's maybe similar to, I don't know, the cloud platforms. Like all of the major cloud successes, biggest technology companies are American companies. It's somewhat similar. Like, we're losing out on the economic opportunity, but I don't think it's like a strategic blocker for us to do AI work.
Right. I have a question. You mentioned before that right now using an AI is kind of like being a kindergarten teacher or like a primary school teacher. Where do you think it will evolve? Will we have to practice teaching skills, management skills? What kinds of skills do we need to leverage AI in the best way possible?
Yeah, I think it depends. It changes over time. As it stands today, I think the most important, like the best predictor of whether someone is like good at making the maximum use of AI tools is curiosity and creativity. So like a standard answer of like, oh, it made one mistake, let me just throw it away. It's like stupid. Like, that's any technology, especially in its early days, has major flaws. You should think about it the opposite. Like, okay, it sucks at most things. What is it great at? And if you keep an open mind and actively experiment on those things, try to come up with new ways to work it into your workflow, I think that's currently the most important predictor. Longer term, I think it's more like general management skills, essentially, that complement. Like, how would you manage a human? Make it very clear what the goal is. Give regular feedback on whether they are on track. And then, humans you have to like encourage and hug and all the soft things, form things as well. With AI, it's maybe not so much. But yeah, I would say general management is one important skill that transfers, I think, quite well to AIs. Another thing which is maybe underappreciated as an effect of AI becoming good at some things is, I decided, basically the reason I am here today, for the past 3 years, I haven't really done many public talks, just because I am, two small kids and a startup CTO, it's very hard to find the time. And I spent my effort more on writing on my blog, the one linked here. But then AIs are getting so good at writing that even though I think my quality is like barely above the best models today, the quantity and personalization you get from the AIs is so much bigger, so much better that it's very hard for me to compete. But I would like to see an AI come here and make jokes and have a smile on his face and do that sort of thing. So to summarize that, the physical presence, personal relationships, trust building, being able to build trust, having, just being someone who is seen as reliable, has a track record of doing things well. I think these are things that matter more now than that each particular technical skill or task can be automated much more easily.
Taivo, I think I would still remain an optimist. So in the future, my AI will talk to your AI, and
yes,
we
can
focus
AI?
on other stuff.
But your AI will talk to my AI, not anyone else's AI. So why is that? Because you find me trustworthy because I was on stage here, right? So that's the... I got you.
So I know that the company that you're working right now in, Pactum, is basically holding negotiations between, like, let's say, large corporate buyers and their suppliers. And basically, it's the haggling game that most procurement offices are doing, but maybe haggling in a good sense, because what they're discussing is all sorts of parameters of supplying something. So first question is that when you went for the job, did you use AI to negotiate your own compensation?
Well, they were the AI negotiation company. I was the individual at the time, so I was at a disadvantage. But no, I just used my normal negotiation skills, my human ones. I don't think I even like asked ChatGPT for help, and it like 30-second lesson on negotiation. The most powerful thing you can have on your side is alternatives. Right? If you go into a deal or a scenario where you have no good alternative, you really want it, you need it, it's basically no leverage that you have, right? So, I don't know, in my case, I had a very clear alternative, which in my case was like not doing anything. I was like, I'm happy to take a vacation for a year, like I don't care. And that was the best leverage I had versus the company obviously needed someone to do a bit of the job that I'm doing now. And of course, just to make it clear, even though we are an AI negotiation company, it's not as though we're like squeezing every drop out of every employee that joins, right? We do try to make fair offers and like leave value on the table for employees as well. We're not optimizing against our employees.
Okay, so this is the lesson learned for everyone. Like in kidnapping, like in job negotiations, have leverage. I think we have time for one more question before we wrap this one up. So maybe we can get one?
I have one.
Go.
Should you say please and thank you to the AI models?
Very difficult one. I never do, and I am extremely brief. I don't know, when I ask something about the practical task, like I try to use as few words as possible just because it takes me time to type them, right? I don't know, what would be a good example? Let's say I have a particular plant at home, Monstera, and I'm like, my question is like, how do you take care of Monstera? And like my typical prompt is like, Monstera care 5 bullets. That's all. Sort of like Google searches, right? Like you learn to remove the unnecessary words because they don't make a change in the output. My wife has the opposite approach. She says like please and thank you, and I think she like maybe appreciates it for a bit of a different reason. So I think you do you. The AI companies right now, they have enough money to pay for the GPUs. So just do something that feels natural to you when talking with the AIs.
Okay. I lied before a little bit, so I have one last question. So there are like 2 types of people in the AI world. Let's say there is a bunch of very optimistic people, which think that everything is going to be wonderful. There's endless possibilities, etc. And then there are people who preach that the end of the world is not so far. Or end of humanity in that sense. So what do you think? In which camp are you?
I could give a whole other presentation on that, maybe a couple of hours, but more a wine conversation, I think. The short answer is I used to be part of, I think a movement, you could even say almost a cult, who was extreme to the side of of doomerism, essentially. For the middle of the 2010s, like 2013 to 17, 18. it was like emotionally too hard on me, so I just stopped. I was like, I can't deal with this. I'll do normal things like working at startups and building robots and stuff like this. And like recently, I've been, coming back to this question a bit. I cannot say that confidently that things will end well, but I don't worry about it. Like, I don't have an emotional investment in this more than I have like an asteroid hitting the Earth and like everyone dying. In a sense, like there's very little that I can do, and I've decided to not take personal responsibility for the outcome of AI on the existence of humanity. Seems like a healthy thing to do to me.
Okay, ignorance is bliss. Thank you, Taivo.
Thank you.
Before you go,
Yes.
so there's a little diploma you can hang on the wall. And,
Thank you.
And there is also some chocolate from Anneli Viik, Estonian chocolatery. So enjoy the sweets, and thank you again for coming.
Thank you, everyone.